pointage.
Ah, il est passé à l'artiste. Super, encore un but sensationnel. That's a brilliant bit of follow-up play by Mahe. Oh my goodness me, what a shot.
Sagosen setter det hen! Han setter den! De er i semifinale igjen!
Welcome to the Unformed Handball Hour, where I am joined by Chris O'Reilly.
Hello, Alex.
But no Brian Campion today, because he is taking a well-deserved holiday, enjoying the sun in Spain. So me and Chris are going to talk about the handball that's going on. And you would think that in the middle of July, there's not much going on. But we have under-20s European Championship. We've got the African Championship. We have the World Games going on. We just finished the North American and Central American qualifying draw, where the USA actually qualified for a World Championship and didn't need a wild card. It was amazing. So lots of handball to talk about, and in particular, we are going to speak to Leonardo Bordonhos, who is in Portugal watching all of the under-20s games. He's going to give us a bit of insight into the championship, into the top players, and the huge hopes that Portugal has in two brothers that you may have heard of. But we'll leave that conversation a little bit. And I think we have to start with just a clap for the USA. They did it.
They did. Well, yeah, they qualified for the World Championship next year in Sweden and Poland, and they did it in style. They absolutely hammered everyone. Not hammered, but they were pretty comfortable, I think, winning that championship against three teams that usually they lose against in Greenland, Cuba, and Mexico. They won every single game.
It was very impressive. It really it's testament to how this squad has actually developed together, because looking at the squad, it's very similar to the one we played against 3-4 years ago. Not significant changes in terms of new random superstars from Spain coming in. Well, one that has come in who's probably changed some fortunes, but otherwise it's a squad that has developed together, that has played a lot. They have a good coach, so I'm really happy for them, and hopefully we will see them in the World Championship this year without any COVID issues like the last one.
Yeah, and I think it was a particularly sweet pair of victories over Greenland for the USA, because I'm pretty sure anyone who listened to the podcast a year and a half ago in the build-up to the World Championship was seeing the fact that Greenland really were, and rightly so, complaining about the fact that they didn't get the North American spot into the World Championship, and USA got it instead of them because of, let's say, the project or the hopes and dreams of making the sport bigger in the USA, and with the Olympics going to LA in 2028. But they played each other in the first game of the championship. They played each other in the final, and on both occasions it was, an 8-goal victory first time around, 7-goal victory for USA second time around. And so really no denying that, at least this time, USA were the top dogs in that region. And it's going to be interesting to see how they get on in the World Championship. I mean, there's the draw was already made, right? So we already have their opponents in the preliminary round. Let me just see if I can. Actually, we only have one of their opponents because of another thing we're going to talk about, the African Championship. So the USA are in with Croatia, which is not easy by any means, and then the African champions and the African bronze medalists. So yeah, it's going to be a tough group for them, but the fact that they're there and they qualified, that's a big step for the USA.
Do you want to run through that draw as well? Very quickly.
Let's do that. Okay, we'll do it quickly. And so in Group A, we've got Spain, Montenegro, Chile, and Iran. Bear in mind here, 32 teams, top 3 in each group go through to the next round. So only one team gets knocked out in each of these groups. Group B, France, Poland, Saudi Arabia, and Slovenia. Group C.
Slovenia, who got a wild card.
Slovenia got a wild card, yes, as did the Netherlands, which is more interesting news there. Sweden, Brazil, the African silver medalists, and Uruguay, one of our favorite teams from that last World Championship. They're
Can't wait
in Group
to watch
C.
Geronimo again.
Yeah, exactly. Group D, Iceland, Portugal, Hungary, and South Korea. That's a very familiar group, isn't it? Iceland, Portugal, and Hungary. And then a team of speedy players. Instead of Netherlands, it's South Korea in there. So that's a bit of a group of death in there, depending on how South Korea are set up. But yeah, not an easy group at all, Group D. Group E, Germany, Qatar, Serbia, and the 5th place team from Africa. That's going to be brutal for them. Group F, Norway, North Macedonia, Argentina, and Netherlands. Another really interesting group there where every team will fancy their chances of going through.
Oh, Argentina will be raging.
They'll be raging.
Got that wild card.
Yeah. Then Group G, I mentioned there before, USA, Croatia, and then 2 teams from Africa. Group H is Denmark, Belgium, who qualified for the first time, Bahrain, and the 4th place team from Africa. So take away, Bahrain at the Olympics last year were very impressive, but Belgium and Africa 4, there's a spot for one of them at least in the next round. And there's your 8 groups.
I'm going to put my money on Denmark to win the whole thing because they're not going to play their first team for the first
week.
For the first week. They're just, I can't wait for the hype that's going to happen in Denmark around that time as well. This always happens where there's a good bit of hype, people support the nation and get a lot of people who don't really support handball on a day-to-day basis also join in. It's on, DR, the main TV channel. Lots of people tune in and it's going to be Denmark playing the 4th best team in Africa and winning by 30 goals.
Yeah.
That's
and on top of that, they're playing their games in Malmö, so it's basically a home venue for them. So that's good for the main round as well. So Denmark, practically a home nation until the quarterfinals.
Always good. But yeah, exciting. Always kind of the World Championship sneaks up on you. These things happen and the draw happens and we're going to have a World Championship in just 6 months. So that's going to be exciting. But before then, we have to decide who these 5 African teams that are going to join, which is quite a lot, I have to say. Seeing as there is 14 teams in the championship and one of which Kenya had to pull out. So just 13 teams competing for 5 spots, which makes this championship pretty exciting. The African Championship itself has had a pretty up and down last 6 months because it was supposed to be held in January in Morocco, January of this year in Morocco, but that was moved due to protests received the day of the draw. So the protests came because Morocco was planning to play some of the games in a disputed territory in Morocco called Sahrawi. So the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, which is a disputed territory, and Algeria especially did not like that there was going to be games in that territory and we're going to boycott the competition. So after a bit of drama, it was initially moved to June, then finally to July, and is taking place in Egypt, which is a good place for it since they just hosted a World Championship recently themselves. So after a lot of turmoil, it has started. And so far, there hasn't been too many surprises. I think we all expect Egypt to really come out on top, and in general it is Tunisia who are their huge rivals in the competition. I don't think the Tunisian team is as strong as it has been in the past, and especially after what happened in the 2020 African African Championship. Do you remember that?
Oh yes, yeah. The scenes, right? Was it in Tunisia? It was in Tunisia, right? Yes.
It was Tunisia playing Egypt in the final in Tunisia in a absolutely insane hall atmosphere in Tunis. And the Tunisian fans got a bit too excited and didn't like the fact that Egypt won. So were winning. They hadn't won the game yet. There was a couple of minutes left. So they stormed the pitch. The fans, that is, they stormed the pitch, attacked some players. It was just absolute insanity. So let's just say if there is a final between Egypt and Tunisia in Egypt, it's not going to be a friendly atmosphere.
Just looking back at that, you said like it seems a lot that that 5 teams are going to the World Championship. From that one, because it was also hosted in Egypt, 7 teams qualified. That's how we were treated to the Democratic Republic of Congo qualifying for that championship, because they finished in 7th place. It's in the quarterfinal stage now, and that's on Friday. Egypt have a tricky quarterfinal, though, against Algeria, who they lost against Guinea, which was a really surprising one. I think I have to see if I can find some highlights of that, because Algeria were winning 14-11 at halftime and then lost 28-22. So that put them up against Egypt now in the quarterfinals. So it's Egypt, Algeria, and Tunisia all on the same side of the draw in the quarterfinals, which means we're going to have a new finalist on the other side of the draw, because it's Guinea versus Morocco in one quarterfinal and Angola against Cape Verde in the other quarterfinal. So one of those 4 teams is going to get to the final for the very first time, which is quite exciting. And so, yeah, it could actually just be a cakewalk for Egypt, or it's going to be a very difficult quarterfinal and semifinal.
I still don't doubt Egypt. No. They're really, I think, really a step ahead of any team, unless the triplets for Tunisia really turn up and show them how it's done.
Yeah. If you don't know what that is, BBC Africa did a feature on 3 brothers, Amin, Anis, and Yassine, and I just love the vibes from their father. A bit like, we'll actually hear a similar view from Leo, our guest coming up, as he speaks about the Costa brothers, but just a handball father with some sons, and how the father approaches their future career. I think I'd be the same if I had twins or triplets. That's what I'd be doing with them. But,
a full backcourt. That is
a full backcourt,
perfect.
Exactly. Yeah, but so an interesting conclusion to the African Championships on the way. I think you're right, though. Egypt they're pulling away a little bit in general with the level they're showing and the players that are moving to Europe. But 4 other places in there for the World Championship next year. So yeah, it could be interesting and very tricky for Algeria if they're going to lose that quarterfinal. They're going to have to beat the likes of DR Congo to qualify for the World Championship. Shall we go into the interview? What do you reckon?
I think so.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the current championship that's in Europe at the moment. It's the men's under-20 EHF Euro, a really interesting championship happening in Portugal. And we're going to speak to Leo Bordonhos from 7 Metros, who's there in Portugal, as he takes us through what's impressed him so far. And there's a lot of players and teams to look back on. So we welcome Leo Bordonhos from 7 Metros in Portugal onto the podcast. Portugal hosting the Under-20 Men's Euro at the moment. It seems like it's been a really fascinating championship. So it's great to have you on, Leo, to talk about it. But how are you doing?
Everything is all right. Chris, Alex, first of all, thanks for inviting me to talk a little bit about this amazing opportunity that is the men's Under-20 European Championship. Like you said, it's been great. The only thing I could point out is that it's almost as if it was written. Here in Portugal, we're going through this massive heat wave, and so it's really hot. But besides that, I think the Euros so far have been amazing, an amazing experience both for Portugal as well as all of the teams participating, and we've seen a few interesting things over these last couple of days.
Yeah, and it seems like there is a bit of interest in it. Definitely that Spain-Portugal game. There was pretty much a full arena, which is amazing to see for an underage tournament. Have you seen kind of good interest in the tournament in the country?
Yeah. It's like I was saying. I mean, I think the fact that it's been so hot, it kind of deterred people from going to the arenas. But that Portugal-Spain game, I mean, I think it was kind of it was almost as if it was a final. There's this rivalry between Portugal and Spain. There's this nice rivalry between the two countries, and so from what I've seen so far, I think those are the two main candidates to win it all. So I think that whole game just had this amazing atmosphere. And then, for example, the Portugal-Denmark game, I was there in the arena, and the moment we started listening to the Portuguese anthem and then the Danish anthem, it was. I mean, I've got goosebumps right now just thinking about it, because it really was an amazing moment, not just for handball fans in Portugal, but even for those players, those young players who've had this amazing opportunity.
Well, you mentioned there the opportunity of having this championship, and Portugal's stock in the handball world has been rising very consistently over the last few years. But I'm pretty sure when they knew they were going to be hosting this tournament, they never in their wildest dreams, the Portuguese handball community, thought that they would have two players on their hands that would be the face of this championship for them. The two brothers, Martim and Costa, who we've spoken a lot about on the podcast in the last few months because they've just captured the imagination. And here they are, absolutely destroying the tournament. You mentioned that game against Spain, and Alex posted on our Twitter account a few days ago that winning goal. But 24 goals between the two of them from 36. I think you tweeted as well about them scoring 42% of all of the Portuguese goals. You couldn't have asked for a better pair of players to have to kind of signify this new generation of Portuguese handball.
And the fact that they're brothers just makes it that much. I mean, it's amazing. And their father, Ricardo Costa, he gave a talk, I think last weekend, and he said that they were a bit of an experiment because, I mean, he was a Portuguese international, one of the most capped players in Portuguese handball history. He played in Spain, he played in Porto. So, when you've got a father like that, and then you decide, well, I want to play handball, I mean, the bar couldn't be higher. And so he was talking about the way how they were sort of experimenting, because he didn't know how it was to raise two sons who wanted to be handball players. And so the fact that they've been able to establish themselves in the way that they did, I think it just shows the talent that they have. Martim, when he played at Porto, both of them have this amazing background, handball background. I mean, they started playing at Colégio de Carvalho, which is sort of this handball, academy school. They're one of the best handball academies in Portugal. And so when Diogo Rema Marques, for example, the Portuguese goalkeeper, he came from Colégio de Carvalho as well as many other players. I mean, they really know how to develop high talent players. And so after going to Porto, Martim had this brief stint in Gaia with Ricardo, and even in the second division, he was able, at 17 years of age, he was the top scorer of the second division the year Gaia won promotion to the league. And so you knew that the talent was there. But the way they've been able to establish themselves this season with Sporting in the European League, I don't even think they were expecting it, to be honest. And I mean, what Francisco as well as Martim did against Magdeburg was outstanding. I mean, it ended the way it did. Sporting could have very well knocked out Magdeburg, because they really were outstanding, and what they've been doing in this Euro is really, I don't want to say it's the main reason, but I mean, when Portugal need a goal, who you want the ball in whose hands. I mean, Francisco is still developing. He's still young. I mean, he's only 17, but you can see that the raw talent's there. I mean, physically, technically, he's outstanding. Martin, he's grown a little bit, so he knows how to play a bit better. He knows when to wait, when to go and play at full speed. But even he's still growing, and so I think this team has shown a lot, but they can still improve a lot.
Yeah, for sure. When you said, in those moments, who the ball is going to come to. And in that Spain-Portugal game, I had no doubt in my mind that the ball was going to Kiko Costa. And to score that winning goal in the last second, and the way he did it was just incredibly dynamic. He jumped in the air as if he was about to jump shoot, and then floated about 2 meters to the right.
It's not an easy goal at all. I mean, because he's jumping outwards, so he's losing angle. He shoots at the near post, which is, usually the goalkeeper has that post. He's trying to defend that. I mean, it's not an easy goal when you're watching it. I mean, I had my phone in my hand after I saw the goal. It flew right into the wall because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was almost as if Portugal had won the Euro. But yeah, I mean, you knew who that ball was going to. And he even said it after the game. I mean, he said that he knew the ball was going to him, and, he just had to score. There was no other option.
And absolutely remarkable that he probably has another 2 years playing under 20, another couple of years. He's still 17.
I don't think we'll see him play under 20s. Maybe the under 21 World Championship next year. But then, yeah, I think his summers will be busy after that, or he'll need that time.
Yeah. And in that right back position, I mean, Portugal historically has had a hard time with their right backs. And I mean, here we have it. I mean, you couldn't, even though we had Diogo Silva a couple of years ago, he showed a lot of promise. Unfortunately, he's had to deal with a couple of injuries. Knock on wood, hopefully he gets better. And Kiko never has to deal with any of that. But I mean, Kiko is just, I've been reluctant to say he's a world-class talent because we know he's only 17 years of age. We know how these things can change in the matter of months. But I mean, it's getting hard not to call him if not a world-class talent, I mean, at least a European-class talent.
I think I think we're happy to say that for you. It's pretty clear. But that's what I think a lot of people are really interested in this championship in particular. The under-20 European Championship and next year with the under-21 Worlds is not so much caring about the results. Of course, if you're connected to a country, and particularly when you're the home nation like Portugal, that's important. But for the neutrals, just seeing the next generation of players starting to show what they're made of, and you look at them playing, and most of them look like they could be playing senior handball. Some of them already are. But it's really a good view of the next generation. And I'm really interested with the amount of games you've seen and the teams you've seen, what other players have really stood out to you and who you see being like this next world class or at least international level player.
Yeah, that's something I've found really interesting is that focusing particularly on Portugal, you have pretty much all of the team has already played at the senior level when it comes to the Portuguese league. And so I think that's really important. I think that's something we've seen in these main stars, if you can call them, these young players who have been showing all of their talent in the European Championship. I've loved what I've seen from the Faroe Islands, and I've tried to pronounce his name a bunch of times. I keep butchering his name, but Elias Elefsen Pagotu. I'm sorry, Elias.
I think that's pretty close. Yeah.
I just want to do this now, and I know he's going to be a star for many, many years, but I'm going to just start calling him Skipper from now on. That's it. Everyone struggles. He's the skipper.
He's the skipper.
I think you'd understand. But yeah, I mean, he played with Sevenhof in the European competitions. If I'm not mistaken, he was the MVP of the Swedish league either this season or last season. I think it was this season. So, I mean, we're talking about a player who was playing at the Under-20 European Championship. This alone just shows, first of all, his talent. Second of all, his maturity. Just to be able to play against on a weekly basis, older competition, stronger competition, and being able to perform at the high level that he's been performing. I saw on Twitter that a lot of people found it odd how he wasn't mentioned in the, I think it was 5 or 6 players to look out for in the European in this Euro. But I mean, we've got so many players. A lot of times we don't even know how they'll show up at the European Championship. They can promise a lot and then really not be able to perform. He himself struggled with injuries in the last 2 games of the preliminary round, and we saw what he did in the intermediate round. I mean, he in the first game he completely dominated. If I'm not mistaken, 12 goals, 11 assists, something like that. And we're not talking about we're not talking. It's the elite of the elite when it comes to that age group in European handball, and he did that. And I'm pretty sure that if he had played those last 2 games against Slovenia and Hungary, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure the Faroe Islands could have surprised a few more people, because I mean that game against Slovenia they lose by 1 if I'm not mistaken. If he plays that game, I'm sure they win. And then Hungary it was a different type of game, but I think he has been one of the key players. Alexander Linden, the Swedish goalkeeper. I've really been into goalkeepers in this European Championship because we've seen so many goalkeepers come out at the end of the day and with outstanding performances. I couldn't find what club he plays for, but I mean, if I'm not mistaken, he has 45 saves, of which 33 were in the main round. In these last 2 games, he had 18 games in the first game of the 18 saves in the first game of the main round, and he had 15 saves against Germany yesterday. The game that gave them the semi-final berth. And so 45 saves is ginormous. I think he's 1.95 meters. I don't know what that is in like feet. I mean, 6 foot.
We don't care. No, we're meters and centimeters here as well. Don't worry.
195 centimeters. He's massive. He's long, but he's quick. And so I think that Sweden have a keeper for the future. I really like what I've seen from him. Then this is a player in the French team. He's not the top goal scorer, but I really liked what I saw from him. He played with Nantes. I think it was not this season that just ended, the previous season. His name is Matteo Faduli. I really like what I've seen from him. I mean, he's quick, he's shifty when he gets to one-on-one, and I really like what I saw from him in a couple of games, even though this French team, I think it was a bit of a disappointment, if you can call it that. I think we're always expecting a lot from France to contend for medals. But I really like what I saw from him. And then when it comes to Denmark, he gave Portugal a hard time in that main round game. Thomas Arnoldson, I mean, he's just another player who physically is massive. I'm astounded at how big these players are at 18, 19, 17. I mean, it's when I was in the arena and I was standing next to them, I was like, you're ginormous. What's happening? I mean, these players are just physically developed for their age. And I think that's key when it gets to playing at the high level that they've been performing. Thomas has 39 goals. He's also one of the, if I'm not mistaken, he's the second leading scorer of the Euro. I liked what I saw from him, even though it wasn't the best game from Denmark against Portugal. He struggled a little bit depending on the game. I still think he needs to gain a little bit more confidence when it comes to like, for example, when Kiku decided he wanted the ball to score the winning goal. I still think he needs to develop a little bit more of his confidence to get the ball and say, okay, now it's my turn. Let me get a shot at goal. But I think we've seen a lot of talent in this Euro so far.
Yeah, and one thing I love about this competition is it's played at such a high pace. That's why we see players getting 12 goals and 11 assists, or double doubles, or goalkeepers. And the one game that really stood out for me was between Iceland and Montenegro, where Iceland won 41-28, but also both goalkeepers made 16 saves. So it just tells you how crazy some of these games are. And it's what have you seen around kind of the styles of handball? Because that's always interesting, especially at this age group. You have teams or players who are, have grown up in their same league in Denmark, for example, and then they come up against a Spanish team which plays a completely different style. Have you seen any interesting styles from any of the teams across the competition?
I think when we get to this age group and players are starting to get near that senior level, even coaches, they, in my opinion, from what I've seen, they don't really differ from what we see at the senior level. I mean, this Spanish team is just a copy of what we're used to seeing the Spanish men's national team perform. Jordi Rivera, he was there, and you can see like the impact that this Spanish team has. I mean, you can clearly see the style of play is brought down from the senior team all the way down to under 18s, under 16s, and even at lower age groups. And so Spain, for example, I mean, it's one of the reasons why they're always contending and why they're able to keep the level of play for years and years and years, because when players get to their first team, they know what style of play is expected of them. And I think we saw that from the Spanish team. I think we saw that from the Danish team. France, I think the French teams usually have one or two key players that usually stand out, either because they're physically gifted or because they're really talented. I don't think we saw that in this French team, and maybe that's one of the reasons why they didn't perform the way we were expecting of them, even though they tried to use a more collective type style of play. But I mean, usually what we're used to seeing from this French team is that when it gets down to it, they usually have one or two players that really stand out and take over when it's needed. Sweden, it's just like we're watching a carbon copy of the Swedish team that won the Euro. And I think that's one of the reasons why they'll be a hard team for Portugal to play against. Portugal, for example, is one of the teams where I think we're completely different from what we see at the senior level, just because I think we've got such a high talent level. We've got so many players that are able to score, which is something that Portugal usually lacks when it comes to the senior team. I mean, we don't see players. I mean, we're talking about completely different levels of handball. The opposition is completely different. And so, of course, we're not going to be able to see a Portuguese player at the senior level score 11, 12, 14 goals like we saw Kiko do more than once at this Euros. But I think Portugal is a bit different. I mean, André Sousa, the playmaker, you can see sort of resemble. He talked about it. He mirrors his style a lot with Rui Silva, who I think is still one of the most undervalued playmakers in European handball. And he'll be playing with Porto next season. And so he himself said that he mirrors his game a lot with Rui. You can see the resemblances that these two players have. But André, for example, he isn't afraid to shoot that goal. He isn't afraid to score, which is a bit different from what we usually see from Rui. When it gets to left and right back, Martin and Francisco are unlike anything we had got at the Portuguese senior team, because they're not afraid to shoot. And I think that's something we lack in the Portuguese senior team. I think those are the main differences. Defensively, it's pretty much the same thing. We've got really good defensive players such as Nilton Melo, Gabriel Cavalcanti, who's Alexandre's younger brother. He's only 17. He's one of the. I was
wondering that. Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of the players who I wanted to highlight, because he's been mainly a defensive presence, but defensively he's amazing. He's 17. I think he turned 17 this year. But I mean, he's 190 something centimeters. He's massive, just ridiculous. He was with Benfica. He was alone down to Vitória this season, which helped him grow. He isn't afraid to hit when he has to hit, but he's quick. He's really quick when it's time to come out and try to contact players at 89 meters. He's great at curving the line players. He's got a bunch of steals this European Championship so far, where he's able to turn around the line player and just take the ball away from his hand at the last second. And so when it gets to styles of play, I think we're starting to see that teams are looking into the future. They're looking at the future and they're seeing, okay, if we want to be able to maintain a level of play at the senior level, this is what needs to happen. These players at younger age groups need to mirror or the team needs to mirror their style of play by the senior teams. And so I think that's what we've seen so far, and hopefully that's what we'll continue to see, because that's how national teams are able to maintain the level for years and years and years.
How about you, Alex? Have you noticed anything different about this championship in the way the teams have approached it?
Yeah, as I said, the pace is more intense. So in general, while the styles may be similar, it really is each team has, most teams have their kind of standout players, which means that they are able to quickly get them the ball. And so it is almost like, France playing at a senior level. You have pace on the fast break because, again, all of these players are also young, fit, and injury-free, touch wood, for the rest of their careers. But, they're all fast, young, quick, and I think that's where handball is going. It's getting quicker and quicker. You can't really get anywhere with a slow-style handball anymore. It's possible at a senior level where you do have much more experience, but at this level, it's all about speed, making sure you get the attacks in and you finish them. And then the last bits really come down to the quality of the players and the goalkeepers. So it's been fascinating to see, and the games are just great fun.
One game that sticks out of my head in the way that a team tried to control the pace was right at the very beginning, the Faroe Islands and Denmark, and that incredible victory for Faroe Islands, where it looked like they really tried to slow things down, but still the score was 33-32. It was not like a low scoring game by any means, and the keepers, it's not like they were letting everything in. It's interesting what you were saying, Leo, about the teams reflecting their senior team, and I think that's not a surprise in any way for the established teams. But then you're seeing Portugal, like you said, maybe not looking towards the senior team, but saying this will be the senior team. So this new group of players is forming the team and is playing in a way that maybe the current crop can't really fit with. And I think we're seeing in the mid-table as well of this championship some teams coming through, Italy and Faroe Islands, for example, who are a bit of a surprise. Well, I mean, maybe not to the complete handball nerds, a surprise package, but if the average handball fan is looking at this championship and they see Italy and Faroe Islands in a competition for the top 10, that is a real surprise for them. And is there any other teams that have surprised you positively or negatively? You mentioned France as well a little bit there, but teams that have stood out for you in a different way?
Yeah, I had Italy as well as the Faroe Islands. Italy, for me, I mean, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really know much about Italian handball before the Euros because, it's not one of those nations where we're used to watching the teams play at a high level, or even the national team. They're starting to contend, but it's not a team that we're used to seeing playing at the final qualifying playoff for the Euros or the World Cup. Yet they've showed that the talent's there, and something that I feel like, for example, looking at this Italian national team, something I feel needs to happen in a similar way to what happened with Portuguese handball a couple of years ago, was players starting to leave their home nation, going and trying to find their place in more competitive situations, more competitive championships, because then they'll bring that experience into their own national team, and that just leads to the whole level evolving. So Italy has been quite the amazing surprise. I'm rooting for them until the end of the championship, because I really want to see how they evolve after this championship. On the negative side, I feel like Norway was a bit of a letdown, even though it's always hard, in my opinion, when we're trying to either preview or analyze championships like this. We're talking about kids, 17, 18, 19-year-olds. And so we never really know what they'll bring, how they'll present themselves in these types of tournaments, even though most of them have already played at the under 18s, under 16s competitions. They know what it's like to represent. Most of them know what it's like to represent their home nation. But when it gets to this level, you never really know, because it's starting to pick up. Like Alex was saying, the tempo is different. The physicality of the game is completely different. And so I was expecting a bit more from Norway. I don't know really what happened to them, but it just felt like they never could really get their game going, either defensively or offensively. I felt like they, at a point in their games, it always felt like they just ran out of solutions, ran out of imagination, didn't really know what to do. And so the other teams just picked them apart at that point. And that's what led to the scores that we saw, where they really have been conceding a lot of goals in this tournament. So I think Norway, Croatia, I was expecting a bit more of them, mainly because, they're a country that has a long tradition in the sport. But once again, I mean, I think it's hard when it gets to this competition, because we really don't know how the players will present themselves and what we'll see from them. Will they be able to perform and show the level that we got used to them? So I think Norway as well as Croatia, those are the two the two teams that I think I was expecting a bit more of them, and I wouldn't say they're disappointed, because I mean I'm not disappointed, but I think they could have maybe done a bit more, or maybe if things were a bit different, they could have contended for a different position.
Slovenia, I think, would be in that package as well. They won this championship last year. Basically, it was under-19s last year, and it's also hard to know, I guess, how teams are approaching it. We've seen over the years teams like Sweden, where every year they take out the whole batch of players and bring in new players, and see it as more of a development thing. So yeah, that's I guess it's good to focus on the positives in this regard when it comes to these teams. Alex, did you notice any team in particular that have stood out for you? Serbia have had a very good championship.
Yeah, I think I was a little bit disappointed in Germany, even though they still made it to the main round. But generally, I feel like a German team should, and it's the first time they haven't made a semi-final at this level in quite a while. So no one really stood. It's more, when I look at these matches, I'm looking at the players who stood out as opposed to the way the team has played. And for me, no one really stood out in this German team. Yeah, that's probably my disappointed. But we're going into the semi-finals, which will be between Spain and Serbia. Portugal play Sweden. We're going to ask you, Leonardo, for some predictions here, and be aware that a lot of people will probably listen to this podcast after all those games. So even more pressure on you.
Okay. Now, yeah. I mean, I'm just going to come out and say it. I think the final is going to be between Portugal and Spain. I think those are the main candidates. Those are the teams that have played the bare handball over the course of this last week, these last couple of days. And so I think Portugal are going to win. I think Spain are going to be able to beat Serbia. Even though I really wanted Germany to beat Sweden. I don't know. Maybe it's just this psychological thing. I'm afraid of the Swedish, that whole coldness. Even though
hey, they're going to suffer in the heat, right? They're going to have some trouble with the temperature.
Hopefully so, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, you just look at. I was talking to my friend and colleague at Set Metros, Emma, during the Portugal-Denmark game, and every time we looked at the scoreboard, we saw Portugal 6 goals ahead of Denmark, and it was just, she kept like nudging me and saying, look at the scoreboard, like, would you believe that Portugal would be like 6 goals ahead of Denmark? Because we usually look at the name of the nation and not at the team themselves. And so every time I look and see Sweden, I think we're going to play the European champions. And so it's tough, but I think Portugal, everything I've seen, the fact that they were able to rest a couple of players against Hungary, I think the team's coming. They're going motivated into this game. I mean, they're playing at home, or we're playing at home, even though I won't be in the court, unfortunately. I wish I was, but yeah, I think we're playing at home, and Portugal will bring it all and hopefully win, because I think we've been really consistent, and maybe we just got that it factor, whether it be Martin, Kiko, or maybe another player like André Sousa, like João Gomes, like any of them who've been playing at a high level. When it gets to Spain and Serbia, I wasn't expecting Serbia to reach the semifinals, and so maybe I wouldn't call it a Cinderella story, because Serbia are quite a powerful nation, but maybe they'll be able to surprise Spain. But I mean, from what we've seen, Spain just have so many options. I mean, they're just able to play either in a more Spanish type of play with a lot of ball movement, players constantly switching positions, or they can play at a high tempo, fast paced game. And when we look at it, I think the Spain have way too many options, and they'll probably beat Serbia. And if Portugal and Spain meet in the final, I think we all know who I'm rooting for, and hopefully we'll get another amazing game. I would just wish if it didn't come down to the dying seconds, and maybe if Portugal could win, and I don't know, by 3 or 4 at least. I think my phone would think it, and my heart would also be much appreciated.
I think that's also, from a neutral point of view, a bit of a dream final for this tournament. So it's Spain and Portugal on a Sunday evening. I think no heat wave could keep people from watching that. And well, I hope for your sake that'll be the case. The semi-finals on Friday night and the final on Sunday evening. Leo, it's been a pleasure to have you on for the first time, and hopefully we'll get you back on again. It's been really nice to talk to you, and let's keep our fingers crossed for Portugal from a neutral point of view as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Alex. If you're ever in Portugal, let me know, and we'll set something up.
Lovely. Thank you, Leo. Take care.
Thanks, Leo.
Thank you.
Thank you to Leo there. A really exciting championship. Lots of stars to look forward to. I'm sure the names that we talked about over the last 20 minutes are going to be names on everyone's minds in a couple of years as they take on the world, the handball world at a senior level.
Including the skipper,
which I'm coining right now because everyone struggles. Yeah. Let's just go with Skipper. He is the captain of the Faroese ship, and he's going to bring them to glory eventually.
Yeah, I'm on board with that.
We have a last competition to talk about, and that is the World Games, where the beach handball competition is taking place. A funny story about that: the Danish men's team was supposed to participate there. Both
men and women.
Both Danish teams were supposed to participate in that World Championship, but an SAS strike happened around the same time as they were going to travel, so they just couldn't get a flight. That is really, really sad. Very difficult for all of those players who won their place in that competition, and I'm sure we're looking forward to taking beach handball by storm at a world stage, but very unfortunate for them.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter because we wouldn't have seen the games anyway, right, Chris?
Well, it matters to the players. It definitely fucking matters to the players. I feel really, really sad for them. Imagine. Because I guess the problem is you can't, you're trying to rebook 30 people. I mean, it's one thing if it's one person, but trying to get 2 whole teams over to Birmingham, Alabama, that's tricky. And so, yeah, really, really sad for them. And also Vietnam's women's team couldn't make it because they couldn't get visas. So sounds like it's all been a bit of a shit show. And I think it is well reflected in the fact that none of the games so far have been streamed, which is pretty mad for what is basically, in other terms, the B Olympics. So it's it's a multi-sport event for sports that are considered Olympic sports but aren't in the Olympics. And yeah, I think it's only now, so we're recording on Thursday, it's only this evening for the semi-finals and then the finals tomorrow that they're finally going to be on the Olympics streaming platforms. I think the German women's team, they've had games on Sport 1 in Germany, but besides that, yeah, nothing. So I've been really hyped about, both of us been really hyped about beach handball this summer, playing it, and then there was the World Championship a couple of weeks ago, and this is something that really should have been an interesting thing to follow, but yeah, there's been no real chance to follow it. So I'm going to watch it tonight and see how it goes. This is semi-finals in both competitions. We have the USA who've managed to qualify both men's and women's teams in there. So It's Croatia against the USA in one semi-final in the men's side, Brazil against Qatar in the other, and then in the women's semi-finals, Norway, Argentina, and then Germany against USA. So anyone who listened to the last couple of podcasts will have heard how impressed Marcio was with Germany's team. They've continued to be really impressive, and maybe they're going to make it a perfect summer for them. Right, we'll leave it there. We have plenty to talk about in terms of transfers in this summer. Barcelona have finally decided to announce a few players, which I think was of great relief to Hampus Vanna, Emil Nielsen, and Jonathan Karlsbergård, who finally got their I'm sure they had their contract signed, but Barca are just really weird about like not announcing players in advance. I'm sure we'll speak a little bit more about that. Do you have any insight as a Barca man, Alex?
I'd say it's literally something as trivial as they need to have the new season's jerseys on, and that doesn't get announced until the summer, where the new kit that's obviously for the football team is also announced. So like I'd say it's just something as trivial as that is holding it back. I think they're stuck in the football way of thinking, in the football processes, and you don't generally announce a signing in the middle of the year with football anyway.
The players knew.
The players knew.
Even if and we all knew, but now it's official. And we'll speak about those transfers and a lot more in the next podcast, and also talk a little bit about the Champions League groups for next season. It feels mad already talking about that, but they're all set in stone. And look back on other things that are happening over the summer, this surprisingly busy summer of handball. But until then, from Alex and myself, take care and goodbye.